Good day, Junior Tickies. I'm Mrs. Brimmago. We are now going to look at Inventories, Chapter 8, Activity 2. Question 2.1. Choose the correct words or word given in brackets. 2.1.1. In the periodic inventory system, import duties are an expense for the business. 2.1.2. The weighted average stock valuation method is ideal for products of similar value and bought in large quantities. 2.1.3. Cost of sales is calculated at the point of sale in the perpetual inventory system. 2.1.4. Stock valued according to first in, first out method shows the value of the closing stock at the most recent stock purchases. This is part of theory that you need to make sure that you study before a test and an exam. Question 2.2. The candle shop. The candle shop sells handcrafted candles. The business uses the periodic inventory system and valued their stock according to weighted average. The financial year ends 28 February 2022. So this is now an example where we're going to look at the weighted average price. Remember, we've got FIFO, weighted average, and specific identification. Before we start with the questions, we are going to look at the workings by looking at the information given and completing it on the trading account. So we're going to start with the opening stock. The opening stock, the number of boxes is 50 and the total price 14,560. If we look at purchases and carriage on purchases, for March, 50 boxes were purchased. The purchase price was 450 per box and the carriage was 50 per box. So we're going to say 450 times 50 and for the carriage, 50 times 50. For May, now have a look, returns, always make sure that you take note of the returns. In May, we've purchased 70 boxes, but 5 boxes were returned. The delivery fee for boxes returned to suppliers is non-refundable. So this means to calculate the purchase for net purchases, we're going to say 70 boxes was purchased minus 5 were returned, and then the cost was 480 per box, so 65 times 480. For the carriage, we have to use 70 times 50 per box. For September, there were no returns with regards to September, so the number of units purchased or boxes was 65 times 490, and the carriage is 50 per box, so 65 times 50. For November, there were returns for November. So we're going to say purchase 100 minus the 16. The cost per box was the carriage was 50 per box times 100. No refund is given for carriage. This is why we need to times it by 100. If we look at January, there were no returns with regards to January, so the purchase is going to be 510 times 45, and the carriage is 10% increase per box. This means we need to take 50 per box times 110 divided by 100, so the new price is 55, and then we times it by 45. Now we can calculate the total net purchases and the total carriage. Take note, I do not add the units for the carriage, only for the purchases. Now, with regards to sales, sales is a question mark. What I do know is that closing stock will always appear on the trading account on the credit side. And the closing stock was given to me, 15 units was left over. So we're going to solve sales later on. Now to work out the value of our closing stock. Using the weighted average means we need to take the opening stock plus the net purchases plus the total carriage divided by 30, the number of units, plus 309. And that equals the average price. To calculate the value of our closing stock, now take 15 times the average price. And that equals 8,025. To work out sales, what is the number of units that we sold? Opening stock plus purchases minus the closing stock equals the number of units sold. And now be careful. Each box contains 20 candles and they said the business charges 45 Rand per candle. So we have to say 45 times 20 and then times 324. That equals the total sales. Now we can calculate the gross profit, take the credit side minus the debit side. So if I subtract the debit side, I'm only going to subtract the opening stock minus purchases minus the carriage. Calculate the value of the closing stock now. This is now completing the first question. Just by looking at the information, it's important to work out the carriage first. I can take 330, that is the number of boxes that we have purchased, and I'm going to times it by 50 Rand per box. But then I'm going to take 45 and I'm going to say 50 times 10% equals 5, then 45 times 5, so this is the increase amount. If I add the two together, it will equal exactly the same answer. Now to get the weighted average price is exactly the same as we've done in our trading account. We're going to take the opening stock plus the net purchases minus the returns plus the total carriage on purchase. Remember at the bottom we have the units, which is 50 plus 50, 350 minus 5 minus 16. To calculate the cost of sales, it's my opening stock plus net purchases. So we're going to say 160,400 minus the returns plus carriage on purchases, which we've calculated, minus the value of our closing stock equals my cost of sales. Remember that you have to use your answer calculated in the previous question, the value of the closing stock. If you look at the trading account, we can take sales minus the gross profit. That will equal exactly the same answer. To calculate the markup percentage achieved, you have to first calculate the number of units sold. Remember, this is now if you haven't done the T account. So to calculate the number of units sold, it is opening stock plus the purchases minus the returns minus the closing stock. To work out the sales, you had to take 324 times 900, remember 20 candles and it's 45 Rand per candle, equals the sales. So sales minus cost of sales divided by cost of sales times 100 equals the markup percentage achieved. Question 2.2.4. Calculate how long the closing stock will last. Determine on what date the owner must place her next order for candles not to run out. The supplier takes 5 working days to deliver after the order has been placed. This means now that we need to calculate our stock holding period. To calculate that, and remember they said closing stock only, so you don't use the average. We're going to take the closing stock divided by cost of sales times 365. Alternatively, you could have said 15 units, which is closing stock, divided by the number of units that were sold. It equals exactly the same answer. To order stock, it takes 5 working days. So we have to take that 16,89 days minus 5 equals 11,89 days. Which means if I look at the calendar, this is when we will be running out of stock. It takes 5 working days for the stock to be delivered from the day it was ordered. So it means that by the 8th, we need to have ordered our stock. Question 2.2.5. State one problem with keeping too much stock on hand and one problem with keeping insufficient stock on hand. So if we look at too much stock, staff may see less movement in stock and decide to steal. Or cost of storage, lack of storage space. Insufficient stock. We will not meet the needs of the consumers and they might go somewhere else. Loss of income from sales. 2.2.6. The owner is of the opinion that there is no difference in the method of stock valuation and that a person can change the method every year. This means changing from FIFO to weighted average to specific identification. Advise the owner by providing 2 points to motivate your answer. So if we look at the first point, it is illegal to change the valuation method each year. This can be seen as tax evasion or manipulation of figures by SARS. Remember that changing from one to another will have an impact on your gross profit. Thank you very much. Next, we're going to look at activity 3. I want to leave you with this quote: "A little progress each day adds up to big results." Have a wonderful day.